It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the shot caller Flaherty. Here we go.
Happy Wednesday evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. I am Pat, the shot caller Flaherty, and as always, I am joined by my partner, Brandon, the Coach Perry, for our weekly sports topic show where we give you 10 topics of sports across the country and across the globe. Brandon, how are we doing this week, my friend?
Hanging in there like always, shot caller, doing my thing. Wanted to give a quick shout out to retiring Sergio Aguero, the Manchester City player and formerly Barcelona as well, retiring from soccer due to health concerns. But that's a big hit for international soccer.
No question. A lot of folks considering retirement these days after everything we've been through the pandemic. Some people are just done. But it's happening in sports, not just in everyday life. So interesting stuff. Folks, as always, you love this sports topic show. And if you can, you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our Comeback Sports YouTube channel. And as always, folks, at the bottom of our screen, you have our Twitter handles. That's both Brandon and I's down there right below us. And folks, if you want to call into the show or leave a voicemail and give your opinion, make sure you go to that number at the top of the screen right there. You can call in live or leave a voicemail later on or in the week leading up to the show as well. We'll try to play it back. We'd love to hear from you live on the show. We've definitely taken live calls before. And finally, folks, as you can see right there on the screen, if you are watching us on YouTube, you can jump into the live chat and give us your opinion in the live chat as well. And let us know what you think about the show or any of the topics we're going over. Ruzaman Reese is always a loyal listener for us down there. We have a few other folks that have been jumping in a lot lately as well. So check that out if you're watching Comeback Sports. Folks, we're going to kick things off with topic number one. And on topic number one, you know, we've been talking about F1 all year long, obviously. And biggest story in F1 came down to this past weekend. And it's, you know, manufactured by Masi, Michael Masi, the head of F1 officiating, came down with this crazy ruling at the end of this race, which was huge because, you know, it was Hamilton and Verstappen. They were fighting for the top spot for the championship over the weekend in Abu Dhabi. And then this crazy ruling happens where Verstappen takes advantage, ends up winning the race, and then ends up winning the championship under these crazy conditions. Brandon, you're going to explain this better than I can, but everybody is frustrated with what happened on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing right now is that the integrity of the sport is at stake and at risk here with what happened and what transpired in literally the championship race. And we're calling this manufactured by Masi because realistically, the race control manipulated the rules, changed rules mid-race, changed decisions mid-race, threw everybody into a complete tizzy, and on top of that, gave all the advantage to Red Bull and Max Verstappen on the very last lap of the race. Mind you, a race that he had not even led at any point. Lewis Hamilton dominated him for 57 laps until he got robbed on the very last lap here by Michael Masi, the race control, and even the stewards. We could put the stewards in here. We've talked a lot how the stewards all season long have been inconsistent, to say the least, and have been really unfair, especially to Lewis Hamilton, always forcing him into a position where he has to back out and take evasive action from maneuvers that Max Verstappen puts on that are completely illegal, dangerous, poor racecraft, dirty, however you want to put it. And that's been happening all season long. So we want to put the stewards in here too. But Michael Masi is the real criminal here, the criminal of F1, absolutely stealing this win from Sir Lewis Hamilton, who's now a knight, officially knighted today. Sir Lewis Hamilton, and stealing the win from him, his 8th world championship title. If you ask any real F1 fan, real motorsport fan, who they believe deserved that championship, who won that race, they're going to tell you it was Lewis Hamilton and that he got robbed and that race control basically cheated and changed the rules on the very last lap. I'll tell you that one of the main things, too, is that team principals being allowed to influence the race director and influence the race. I was telling producer Ben, that's like basically the equivalent of a coach in NFL. It fumbles, it goes to replay. the NFL coach calls up the replay center and says, nah, that wasn't a fumble, man. We deserve the ball back. And, matter of fact, we deserve it at the 1, 1st and 10. Guess what? That's exactly what happens. They get that call. That's exactly the same thing. That is clearly cheating. That is biased play, and it's unsporting to say the least. But, man, there are so many people that are upset. And like I said, I had new fans actually sending me messages saying, what's going on here? Yeah. Like, why is this? Even new fans could see and recognize that it was unfair and that rules were being broken to basically help Max Verstappen and Red Bull. And so they're even questioning, and these are fans from the United States saying, why would I want to watch a sport that has a manufactured ending and a manufactured and manipulated championship? And that's what a lot of people are saying right now. So the integrity of the sport is at stake right now. And for anybody that didn't watch, what happened was a crash came out. Nicholas Latifi for Williams crashed with 5 laps left to go. Generally, and I'm talking 99.9% of the time, when that happens in Formula One, the race ends under safety car because there's not enough time to basically clear the wreck, clean up any debris, get the track racing surface clear, plus reshuffle the cars by rules to get all the unlapped cars cleared, and then have another lap for the safety car to still be able to come in after that's all settled. Generally, that takes more than 5 laps, and it was really only about 4.5 because Hamilton had already crossed the start line finish when this happened, and that obviously limited him as well. He couldn't go into the pits because he had already crossed the pits and had passed that when Latifi crashed. So there's really, in my opinion, only 4.5 laps left in this race. So it would end under safety car. Numerous drivers, when the crash comes out, their engineers come on and tell them, safety car, safety car. They said the race is over, right? The race is over. And then the engineers coming back saying, we don't know, like, stand by. We're going to get information going on. And then they confused literally every team on the grid except for Red Bull, because Red Bull was the one calling the shots and making those calls to Michael Massey and influencing the race. It's absolutely disgusting. But after that came out, there's 3 real options that could be completely fair and that would follow the rules and that everybody would have been happy with, to be honest. The first one that would have provided an exciting ending, would have provided live action racing, would have been an automatic red flag the race. When you red flag the race, that means it stops. Everybody comes into the pits. You're allowed to change tires, that's a questionable rule that they got to look at going forward anyway. But you're allowed to change tires. At that point, Lewis Hamilton would have put on a brand new set of reds. Max Verstappen would have put on a brand new set of reds. Carlos Sainz would have put on a brand new set of reds. Pretty much everybody would have put on a brand new set of reds. And we would have had a 5-lap shootout, or like I said, a 4-lap shootout of just pure speed racing, fair competitive edge to the very end to see who your champion would be. That's the very number one option I think that everybody wanted to see. Michael Massey robbed us all of that. The second option that would have happened, that should have been by the rules, is, okay, you want to see live racing and live action? We've still got to clean up the accident and clean up the cars, but we're not going to unlap cars. Everybody will stay in position. Yep. And at that point, there would have been about 5 or 6 cars in between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, all lapped. We would have went back to racing, green flag racing, for about 4 laps, and Max Verstappen would have been getting blue flags, so those cars would have had to clear for him, but he still would have had to pass those 5 cars to get up to Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton was driving so superb that day, there's no chance Max Verstappen had an even chance to do that. Red Bull knew that, so they called for the 1 lap of racing at the very end. The third option that would have been legal and would have all been good is what we all said, that 99.9% happens at the time. The race ends under safety car. Nobody changes positions. Those 3 options would have been awesome, and it would have been a legit championship, a true champion. Nobody would have questioned what was going on. Instead, Michael Massey creates his own rules, changes everything, only unlaps 4 cars, the 4 cars or the 5 cars that were in between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, which now brings Max Verstappen directly behind Lewis Hamilton on a brand new set of reds because he pit, which is a clear unfair advantage. Who else should have been able to unlap? Sebastian Vettel should have got unlapped. Mick Schumacher, I believe, should have got unlapped, or not Mick Schumacher, but I believe there was somebody else in between there that would have got unlapped. So Daniel Ricciardo would have got himself unlapped. And so it would have taken longer to get all those cars unlapped. And it would have been about 7 or 8 cars to unlap themselves by rule and by regulation. Instead, Michael Massey changes all the rules, only unlaps 4 or 5 cars. And then on top of that, like I said, once you unlap the cars, you got to give still one more lap for the safety car to come in so all the teams can communicate, know where they're at, know that we're going to go back to racing. On the same lap that he unlaps the cars, he says, we're going back to racing. He tells everybody and communicates that literally in Sector 3, which is at the end of the track, right before we're about to start racing under the hotel. Mercedes is caught off guard. Literally every other team is caught off guard. They don't know we're going back racing except Max Verstappen. He knew it. He was on a brand new set of reds. He goes and takes advantage. And I'm not calling him that C word, that championship word. If anything, it would be a C word that people don't like to hear in life. That's what I'd rather call him and Red Bull, because they manipulated this championship. It's just all fake. It's all tainted. We'll talk about that more on the next subject. But just quickly before I pass it off to you, there's a lot of team radio coming out from all the other drivers literally mid-race when this is happening, saying this is completely unfair or this is effed up, in the words of Daniel Ricciardo. He literally says, I'm so glad I wasn't part of that because this is so effed up. Literally, Lance Stroll goes, what the F just happened? I didn't even get to race. I didn't get to unlap myself and go to race for position. Carlos Sainz, who was in 3rd position, the last podium position, he didn't get cars unlapped in front of him, so he had to go by lapped cars to be able to fight for that podium. Realistically, he should have been up there fighting for the win with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, but the FIA and Michael Massey don't think that Ferrari or any other driver or anybody belongs to be racing for the win except for clearly Max Verstappen. So there's a lot of people with a lot of questions here. I really hope that Mercedes brings this to the highest court and the highest appeal and gets this overturned. That's the only way that you keep the integrity of the sport. Otherwise, you've got a clown champion, a fake champion, and a tainted title.
Yeah, it's chaos, just absolute chaos. And, I think the biggest thing that I see looking at this is, there was clearly so much at stake in this last race. How many times has this happened where the 2 top drivers at the top of their game, both equal amount of points, and wins were just 1 win separated the 2. So if Hamilton had won, he would have had the equal amount of wins to Verstappen. So that everything was so locked up and tight that I think Masi just freaked out and didn't know what the hell to do. And kind of when you see players in sports where they just, when it comes to nut crunching time, they just kind of, have those deer in a headlight situation. I think that's what happened with Masi. There was so much at stake. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want to say, oh, the race has ended in these final 5 laps, because that's just anticlimactic. You know what I mean? Even though it would have been the right call. And like you said, that is 99% of the time what happens with the crash like that. It's the last 5 laps, and then the race is over. So, that's what should have happened. But he was thinking in the back of his mind, am I going to let this happen on this last race of the year with these 2 guys duking it out for the title, even though it should have gone to Hamilton? So I think he just freaked out in that situation. And we've talked about this all year long. It just seems like these penalties and anything that happens in F1 racing, the rule clarity just doesn't seem to be there. And there's no consistency, like you mentioned. And actually, I was reading an article earlier today. Back in 2020, Massey ruled on something else where he actually talked about finishing a race, with the penalty car, and not the penalty car, but with the last few laps after an accident, where whoever's ahead at the time is actually the winner, and that's what should have happened. So he contradicted himself. So it's like these rules are just. It just seems like people are just throwing a dart at a dartboard and seeing what they should rule at the time. I mean, you mentioned not just Masi, but the stewards as well. It doesn't seem like there should just be one person figuring this out either. And I was listening to a podcast on The Ringer, and I think it was Kevin Clark was saying this guy has too many jobs during a race. Like, you need to split this up and have one particular official take care of this, and then have Masi, he does some other things as well. Like, split all this stuff up. This is like $1 billion, sports industry. Like, split this stuff up. So, it's almost like in the NFL when we look at the referees and everything's clunky and they're looking at replay. We've always said, have an eye in the sky. Have an additional official up top in a booth that's looking at the replay and just quickly going down to the ref. Okay, this is what happened on this play. Rule it this way. Instead, they have to have the head ref go over and take the time because they love the commercial part of it, but also because, the head refs need to, be so involved and make sure that they're the ones that are making the ruling. So Masi's got too much to do. But just the clarity of these rules and these rulings, it seems like this whole year has been like this. And I don't know if it's because it's, part of the pandemic or the rule changes that are happening in the offseason. I don't know what's going on, but it just seems like there's just more chaos than ever before.
Yeah, more chaos than ever. And hey, we're talking about rules that have been set in stone in Formula One for almost 50 years. And like you said, this year they just flouted them and just threw them out the window. There is a rule book. When people are like, oh, Michael Masi, he's new to the job, he might not know what he's doing. There's a rule book. If he actually studied it, he'd know what he's doing. It's my equivalent today, man. We had some horrible referees in basketball who didn't actually know some of the actual rules.
Yeah.
So then how can you be an official in the game if you actually don't know the rules? It's the same thing. It's the equivalent of that. And just quickly before we pass this off, man, people are saying that Netflix influenced it. Literally Netflix influenced it. Hear me out. Because they wanted that last lap drama for Drive to Survive. So they got even on the horn being like, man, get it racing, get us anything for one lap so we can have more to talk about in Drive to Survive. So people are saying boycott Netflix, boycott Drive to Survive. I'm seeing Rosamund Reese saying boycott the FIA, boycott F1 in the comments. A lot of people are saying that, and that's why I'm saying the integrity of the sport is literally at stake right now. So something's had to be done. I really hope that Mercedes pushes this to the highest courts and gets it overturned. And by the way, this happens all the time in Formula One too, where they look back after the race and say, nope, we got this wrong, or somebody gets penalized post-race and they change up the order. So people saying that you can't do that, yes, you can. Ask Carlos Sainz how he got his first podium in 2019. That was from basically changing the podium pre-race, post-race. Somebody got a penalty and he got promoted from 4th to 3rd. So it happens all the time. They can clean this up if they really want to. Let's see if they will. Let's move on to topic number 2. We're talking about tainted title. That's what I wanted to call this. I know like the shot caller wants to have a question mark next to it, but for me, there is no question about it. To me, this is definitely the tainted title.
Yeah, the tough part for me to say this is it is tainted. I agree with you there. The tough part for me, though, is as much as Verstappen can be, way too aggressive and dangerous driving, the guy had an unbelievable season. And I do think that, this one in particular is not on him. He didn't do anything to create this controversy. Now, Christian Horner could be a different story. But, to me, this is on, Masi and the race officials. This isn't on the driver himself. So he's the one that I'm thinking about saying, like, I almost feel bad for Verstappen because, he didn't ask for this situation to happen. He just wanted to go out there and drive and win the title. So, and he had such a good year. It just sucks that it had to end this way. So that's the reason why I'm like, I wish this title wasn't tainted, but it is just how it was officiated, and it's not like, Red Bull just took advantage of everything. And if they're allowed to do that, I don't see why they wouldn't, but it's just the fact that they were allowed to, like you mentioned, they were allowed to put the soft tires on. And then as soon as that happened, it was game over. I mean, Hamilton had no chance as soon as Verstappen was able to change his tires. So, I'm sure Verstappen at some point is sit in the back of his mind, like, this doesn't feel great, the fact that we won this title, but it's also his first of many. He's definitely going to win another one. He's that good, in his career. But, it's crazy that, this season had to come down to this. And yeah, I agree. I do think the title's tainted.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be when you look at it. Another equivalent to like a major sport that everybody can remember that failed pass interference call with the Saints and the Rams just a few years ago. The exact same thing where people were questioning, do the Rams even belong in the Super Bowl? And they really didn't, because there was clearly a blown call that would have won the game for the Saints. It's like the same thing here. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be tainted no matter how you bring it up. And like you said, I do feel a little bit bad for a good driver who, if this stays, people will always question it. You know, you'll have probably even more than half of the people saying he's not the real champion. He doesn't deserve it. So imagine walking around life with hearing that your whole life. So I get it. I get it why people would be a little upset. But at the same right, Red Bull set this up, and they're a team. This is a team sport, and he's part of that team. He's the leader of that team with Christian Horner. So to me, I do blame him and along with it too. I get it. You know, Christian Horner really set it up as the coach, but as the player, he was happy and glad to take advantage of it. Like you said, like most players or drivers probably would in general. I'm not questioning him for taking advantage of the situation that FIA set up. But I still think the title is tainted no matter how you look at it. And there's not really any championship that is this controversial when you go back, even to Senna and Prost, where they crash each other out. This was more controversial because race director changed rules, manipulated rules that were set in stone for 50 years here, and that everybody knew were rules. And we were all watching it play out in front of us being like, we know this is wrong. This is actually not what's supposed to be happening in the race. So I think that's why a lot of people are questioning this. They're even questioning if they want to continue to watch F1. Even me, myself, like I said, a person that has loved F1 for so many years of my life, I'm now questioning, like, is this worth it? Dedicating, like, watching all these races, 22 races, and then it is all just decided and off track by somebody else all ahead of time. So manufactured by Masi is the key, and people are calling for him to get fired. And I think that's one of the, and like I said, not just the only move they need to make, but one of the moves that will bring the integrity back to the sport is by getting a brand new race director, one that actually knows the rules and will pay attention and abide by the rules no matter the situation. So that's what they've got to do. They've got a lot to clean up here. And like we said, I'm still hoping Mercedes brings this to the highest court. They literally have said nothing since the end of the race. They haven't even cared about winning the constructors title because they realized they got robbed, and this was literally taken from them right in front of their eyes, and they're not going to stand for it. I believe in Toto Wolff. I believe in Mercedes that they're going to take this to the highest court and try to fight it as much as they can, get it overturned. And like I said, Formula One can overturn and change decisions and move podiums and move positions well after the race. That's well within their rights, especially when new information comes out. And if the highest court says they literally broke the rules and couldn't even follow their own rules, I don't know how you can't change it. So definitely this is a tainted title.
You know what I say? Line these two guys up at the same racetrack and do like 20 laps and see who wins. And that's who wins the title. You know, like you already made a stupid rule. Just let's just go crazy and do that and have these two guys duke it out. You know what I mean? We'll see what happens.
5 laps.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens with Mercedes. Like you said, they haven't said anything because they're building a case. You know that. But folks, that's going to do it for topic number 2. You're now on topic number 3. And of course, amongst everything going on in F1 with the chaos, we also had a legend didn't finish his last race, but was participating in his last race. It's Kimi Raikkonen, who at 42 years old is now retiring from F1. He was a champion back in 2007, very obviously successful driver in F1 for a couple of decades. Brandon, another great driver that's leaving F1. You never want to see it, but we see a lot of new young guys coming in, but this guy was one of the better ones.
Yeah, one of the best. I mean, an absolute legend, not only on the track, but off the track, too. This guy is the meme machine of Formula One because he's always saying something funny or like out of this world, or you never knew what Kimi Raikkonen was going to do unless it was on track, and he was going to give you some of the best, cleanest, like I said, best driving I've seen in a long time. This guy's a Formula One champion as well. You know what I mean? I think people tend to forget that he did win the championship and was the last championship winner for Ferrari. Okay, so he did it for the prancing horse, the last guy to bring the championship back to Maranello for Ferrari. That's got to say something, right? I mean, he is an absolute legend. I love Kimi Raikkonen. Sad to see him walk away. He still got it, though, honestly. If you gave him a better car, he'd be up there competing and trying to get on the podium. I just think he realizes, his days with the top teams are done. He's not going to get a great machine going forward. I think he doesn't like the regulation changes as well. So I think he's like, I'm out of here, baby. I'm done. You know what I mean? I'm riding my horse out on my own terms, which is great. A lot of great athletes do that. They leave on their own terms instead of being forced out of the sport late in life, But I'm telling you, this guy's still got it, man. He's just as good as Alonso, who's up there in age, Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton. He's still up there with those guys that are all, the veterans of the grid right now. So he could have easily continued to race if he wanted to. This is a personal decision. He wants to step away from motorsport and either go race something else, maybe rally car racing. Who knows? Maybe he will go to IndyCar like a lot of the great Formula One drivers are doing, where they can go on a more even-footed, like competitive, because the cars are a lot more even team to team. So maybe he can go out and win, kind of like, most recently, Roman Grosjean, Marcus Ericsson, Kevin Magnussen, 3 Formula One drivers that made their way right to IndyCar immediately. So I don't know if Kimi Raikkonen's exactly done with motorsport. He's definitely done and retired from Formula One. And it's sad to see him go. But just quickly, he delivered some more golden content pre-race this week when they asked him, it's a brand new track or with a different layout, and he even said this at Jeddah too. And he said, are you going to do a track walk? And he said, no, even more of a reason not to do a track walk. Very long lap. So he said that at Jeddah, that he didn't want to walk around because it was too long of a lap. And then here at the end of the season with the track changes, he didn't care. This is his last rodeo. I don't need to do a track walk. So the man's an absolute legend. We love you, Kimi Raikkonen. It's sad to see you go, but I hope you come here to the States and race IndyCar.
Yeah, Raikkonen seems like one of the drivers who you'd want to have a beer with on a Friday night. He's one of those kind of guys. But yeah, I mean, this guy, I think he's 4th all time in points. He's, like you mentioned, he won it in 2007. He hadn't won a Grand Prix since 2018. I think it was the U.S. Grand Prix. But guy, and I didn't even know that about the Ferrari side of it, that he was the last one to win the championship for Ferrari. And, we talked earlier in the year about how Ferrari's still trying to get back to, they're obviously finishing in the top 10 a lot and things like that, but they're not that elite team that they used to be. And he was the last driver to be in that seat, to be in that elite team with Ferrari. So it's almost like, you got to think for Ferrari, it's almost like their time in the sun, their time when they shine is kind of leaving F1 right now. And now they're probably scratching their heads like, we really now need to kind of ramp up what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, he's a character, and part of F1 is characters and, the drama. That's why Drive to Survive was so good, is because the drivers are characters. That's why Daniel Ricciardo is the most popular driver probably on the circuit, on top of Lewis Hamilton. So, a personality like this, it's good for the sport. It's good for F1. So you hate to see him go. But like you mentioned, he's probably just I don't know if I blame him either. We have all these rule changes. These drivers have talked about how they have to make some adjustments. And he probably is I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to step away. There's no reason for me to do that. Like you mentioned, doesn't have the car anymore. He's 42. So it's kind of getting to that point where you're am I going to be able to compete with, this older body and a worse car? I can't carry this worse car he probably could even a couple of years ago. So makes total sense for him. We're sad to see him go, but he's I think everybody understands why he's leaving.
Yeah, no, it's sad to see him go. Like I said, I mean, more legendary moments. I've quickly got to bring up that time at Monaco where his car breaks down and he goes right to the yacht and just says, forget going back to the paddock or anything. I'm going to go have a drink on the yacht. There it is. Thank you, producer Ben. Absolutely legendary moment. No other driver has matched that type of moment when they've had a DNF and just walk to the yacht at Monaco. It's amazing. But he's the man. He really is. He's going to be missed. And like I said, I think he still could do it, man, if he had a better car. But with the regulation changes, when all the drivers and they announced the car and they kind of unveiled it, and all the other drivers were looking at it, maybe studying it, being wow, kind of looks cool. You go to Kimi Raikkonen and he's just got the most disgusted look on his face. Yeah. And one of the comments was people were being like, they ruined his hobby. They ruined his hobby by changing the cars. And so he's out of here. But just quickly before we go on, I've got to believe in Charles Leclerc, honestly, that he is going to bring championship form back to Ferrari at some point. So look out for that. And I'm a big fan of Charles Leclerc. But Kimi Raikkonen, we're going to miss you. And like I said, come over and race IndyCar, man. We'd love to see you here in the States full time. Let's move on to topic number 4. Changes on the horizon, and we're talking about the regulation changes in 2022 and how we're going to see a brand new set of cars. You know, not only an end of an era with losing Kimi Raikkonen and losing some amazing drivers, but you've also lost this current generation of car. Current generation of car is out the window. We're bringing in a new set of wheels.
Yeah, we mentioned this all year long, how this has influenced a lot. I mean, we even mentioned during the middle of the year, is Mercedes kind of punting on the season? Now, obviously, that didn't come to fruition. Leonard Hamilton, picked up how many wins in the second half of the year? Or Leroy Hamilton. Did I say Leonard Hamilton? That's terrible.
Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton. God, what am I doing here? But, just to think about these changes and how much it's affecting, this whole circuit is crazy. And you think about how many different drivers have come in and replaced other drivers, and all the different seats that got moved around in season is part of this as well. So and you think about like how many different teams are trying to adjust to this whole thing, and they're actually more apt to make these moves with these drivers because they know everybody else is going to kind of start on the same playing field. So for the most part, it's just crazy how much these rule changes have influenced how these teams and drivers approach races and how they approach their status amongst the grid. So it's going to continue to be that way. The silly season, the off season is going to be crazy, probably even crazier. I'm sure that some drivers are going to come out, and as soon as they actually sit in the cars and drive them for real, they're going to be complaining, I'm sure, about some of this stuff. The tires are bigger. Even the amount of money you can spend on the car is limited now. And just a lot of other different things that are going to happen with these cars, how, races are going to be a little tighter, that you can actually be not bumper to bumper, but you can be real close to drivers now with the new regulations too. So a lot's going to change quickly. And I think in the beginning of next season, because of these changes, it's going to take time for these drivers to adjust.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I think they are hoping it is going to be bumper to bumper. Like, that's the whole hope, that we're going to have tighter racing, more competitive racing across the board. And that, with this current generation car that we're losing, with the effect of dirty air from the aerodynamics, that's what it makes it hard to follow so close at times or for a longer period of time. So what they've done is they've rechanged pretty much all the aerodynamics for this new car in 2022 to hopefully eliminate, or if not eliminate, minimize that dirty air, so cars can now follow closer for a much longer time and won't eat up their tires trying to follow closer. Thus, we'll see closer, tighter, more competitive racing, and we'll see hopefully more overtakes as well. So that's what, the whole hope is for all the teams and Formula One and what this design was meant for. But we'll have tons of questions until we get to that first Grand Prix in Bahrain, and then even the second Grand Prix at Jeddah. I'd say maybe even the third one, and I got to equate this to basically NASCAR as well. NASCAR is dumping their current generation of car and going to a brand new next generation of car. So they're in the same boat where even their first couple races are still going to be gathering data to see, is our simulations correct? Are we getting the right racing product that we want? Formula One is in that exact same boat with just a much larger crowd, obviously, watching globally and worldwide, paying attention. So I hope we get that. I hope we get closer racing, and I hope we get to see all 10 teams being up there fighting for the win, because as a race fan, what can get more exciting when you've got 20 cars all fighting for a win?
We've talked all year about the top two teams with Mercedes and with Red Bull, and of course, Ferrari always comes up, and we've talked a little bit about McLaren and even Alfa Romeo. But you think about like Haas and how they just have like no shot in these races. They just don't. They don't have enough money. They don't have the drivers. They don't have I mean, money's the biggest part of it. They don't have the car, and you're hoping that even a team like that doesn't necessarily have to win races all the time, but just to get, in the get top tens, try to get close to a podium, try to, get close to competing. You hope that that's what happens, because some of the teams on the back end of this, they're just never there. They're never even close. They never even sniff it. So you hope that these rule changes affect those teams the most. Not necessarily to pull Mercedes and Red Bull all the way to back to everybody else, but just to, almost give a bump to those teams all the way at the bottom. That's, I think, what everybody's looking for. So we hope we see that here with the new rule changes in 2022. We'll be talking about it a lot over the coming months, I'm sure. Folks, that's going to do it for topic number 4. Moving on to topic number 5, and certainly we're talking about the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from Alabama, Bryce Young. Guy has been unbelievable this year as a sophomore. First year as the full-time starter for Alabama. As us Patriots fans know, last year it was Mac Jones, as Young sat as a sophomore. And I think it's a great question, Brandon. Is Alabama becoming a quarterback university?
I think the answer's got to be yes. I mean, you look at some of the guys that they've got currently in the NFL with Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones, and then it's that third guy I always forget. Tua, yeah. I don't know how I always forget Tua. We were talking about him last week too. But those top 3, right? And that's most recently. And then it's like they reload. It's like it went from one of those guys to the next guy to the next guy, and then here's your next guy, and he's also the Heisman Trophy winner. So I think you've got to say they've got to be up there with being QBU, man. I can't really, off the top of my head, think of another university that has matched them recently with the talent that they brought into their QB room or leading their team. And I'll tell you just quickly, man, 5 or 6 weeks ago, fans were questioning Bryce Young if he could get it done, if he was the guy that was going to lead Alabama to the championship. And Nick Saban quickly came out and squashed those and told them that they were basically spoiled fans and that they needed to basically shut up and watch this kid do his thing. Over these last couple of weeks, he dominates, beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, just rolls it up these last 5-6 weeks, throwing for well over 300 yards, sometimes 4-5 touchdowns a game. He really separated himself over the last second half of the season here. And like I said, maybe those haters really pushed him forward, but I also think the support from his coach meant a lot for his confidence, and he tore it up here and proved that he's the best player in college football, even as a freshman. And I think it was undoubtedly, it was this guy. There was a couple other guys that were maybe in the question earlier in the season, but like I said, down the stretch, there was nobody better in college football than Bryce Young. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what this kid can do. Remember, he's not even eligible to go to the NFL really yet. So he's got to come back. He's got to come back and play his sophomore season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this kid can come back and do off that Heisman year.
Yeah, no question. I think, the other thing too is, he was going to struggle at the beginning of the year just because it's hard. It's hard to take over a national championship winning college football team I think he's actually a sophomore this year. It's changed so much. I don't know if he redshirted last year. Everything is all kind of all over the place. So he's got to play at least one more year before he can go in the draft, because he's going to be 3 years removed from high school. But yeah, I mean, in the fact that it took him 5 weeks, that's just totally normal. That's normal for a quarterback to have to kind of get adjusted to that, and take, carry the pressure of having to lead a national championship team once again. And I mean, that game against Auburn, which he wasn't flawless. I mean, he made mistakes, but bringing that team back and tying it up and then going to overtime against Auburn late in the year. And then folks have been talking about all year how Georgia is the top college football team with that great defense, and Alabama put up points, and they had a great game against them and a great game plan. But going to the quarterback side of this and how Alabama has sort of become quarterback it's been very unique. I mean, you think about Jalen Hurts, their last quarterback that was good in an NFL caliber quarterback before Jalen Hurts was A.J. McCarron, and he was a 5th-round pick, I think back in, 2014 or right around that time. So it had been from that time until now with Jalen Hurts, where you've actually had an NFL caliber quarterback start for Alabama. And even Jalen Hurts was more of a runner and more of a, not an option quarterback, but people didn't consider him to be this NFL caliber quarterback until he proved it in the NFL. And then you have Tua take over for Jalen Hurts, and then you have Mac Jones take over for Tua when Tua gets hurt, and now you have this stud quarterback come in and Bryce Young. So I think there's a couple of things that are happening here. One is that Alabama is recruiting out of state really well with quarterbacks. Bryce Young's from California, and in the past, it was USC, it was Cal, it was maybe UCLA that would get the top quarterbacks in recruiting. But USC has been, all those teams really have kind of been on a downturn a little bit. Now with Lincoln Riley going to USC, things might change. Maybe Alabama doesn't get the California quarterback in the next couple of years. But Mac Jones is from Jacksonville. We talked about this before. He should have been a Florida Gator. I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't have been there. But Florida messed up. Alabama got him, and look what happened. He was the first-round pick in the NFL. So, you look at all these guys, and Alabama's just out-recruiting teams, and they're not just out-recruiting teams at running back anymore or at offensive line or on defense. They're doing it at quarterback now, too. And guys are committing to Alabama knowing that there's a stud quarterback ahead of them because they keep saying, and they keep seeing these other quarterbacks, and they keep saying to themselves, when it's my turn, I'm getting the keys to a Ferrari. I'm getting the keys to a team that I can win a national championship with just by running the offense, and that will help me get into the NFL. And I don't know when it's going to stop. I mean, they're still going to get great recruits, even no matter what Lincoln Riley does. LSU's going to get good quarterback recruits with Brian Kelly down there in his offensive system, but I don't see quarterbacks not going to Alabama for a long time. I think there's going to be a lot of good quarterbacks to come after Bryce Young.
Yeah, no, Nick Saban will have a 4 or 5 star quarterback ready to go when Bryce Young's ready to leave. Like you said, he's out recruiting everybody right now. And like we talked about this, I think a couple of times on this show, all he's got to do is roll up in their living room and say, you want to go to the NFL? All right, cool. Look at all these championship rings. All right, cool. You want to go to Alabama? All right, cool. That's pretty much all he's got to say. Like, it's done deal. Like, and like you said, these quarterbacks are ready to go. They know they're going to get coached by not only Nick Saban, who was a former NFL coach himself and has all these connections to the NFL, but you got Bill O'Brien on the staff, a former NFL coach that's coaching the quarterbacks and the offensive coordinator. So you're getting coached by NFL talent before you're even in the NFL. That's going to help you propel faster to the NFL. Yep. And on top of that, like you said, you're going to have a chance to win the national championship. So for recruiting for him is totally easy. They are going to have another 5-star quarterback ready to go. But just quickly, man, he's got to still lead his team in this playoffs and maybe go for this national championship and maybe beat Georgia for a second time. So I personally think it's going to come down to those two teams, but we're going to see. And we're going to see now that he's got the weight of the Heisman on him too. Is he going to continue to produce? I think he will. I believe in this kid, and I think Alabama is going to finish strong here down the season. Let's move on to topic number 6. Topic number 6 is a sad one, honestly. When this is, rest in peace to Demayrius Thomas, the great wide receiver for the Denver Broncos and played here in New England for a short stint, but everybody loved him. Just a great guy. And when I saw this, I was actually heartbroken.
Yeah, as soon as you hear Demayrius Thomas, first of all, I did a double take. I'm like, wait, wait, what? And then you think, okay, did he, unfortunately, the first thing you think, because he's so young, you say, did he commit suicide? Was there an overdose? What happened here? And then come to find out, Demayrius Thomas has had seizures for a long time now, and he had a seizure in the shower. He fell, and it's just awful. I mean, his friend found him. It's just this whole thing is just awful. And as soon as he passed away, you saw teammates from all over the place. I mean, there were a ton of Patriots teammates who came in. Tom Brady was talking a lot about Demayrius Thomas and how great of a guy he was. And then I was like, is Brady really that close to him? He was only with the Patriots for a few weeks. I feel like he wasn't on the team for the whole season. And then there was a picture of him and Brady when Thomas was on the Jets and Brady was still on the Pats. They met at midfield after a game and were hanging out and talking. And clearly there was a connection there, not just football, not just receiver to quarterback, but more of a connection off the field too. Wes Welker and Julian Edelman came out, and then of course Peyton Manning and all the guys that he played with, Tim Tebow, and just on and on and on and on. Everybody talked about how great of a guy he was. I mean, at one point he was a great receiver, physical specimen. Was part of that unbelievable year with Peyton Manning throwing all those touchdown passes. But it was, him off the field, the things that he did for charity, just the guy that it seemed like the day-to-day interaction with Demayrius Thomas was what everybody loved the most. And this is sad. And I think the other thing that we do have to bring up with this too, and it's terrible, but it's part of football now, is CTE. Was there CTE involved with his seizures? Was this CTE part of this problem? Because we had a defensive back from a few months ago who was on the 49ers for a little while, his last name is Phillips, who actually killed people, kind of went on a rampage and killed people by shooting them. I think 6 people. So, and there was found, they just came out actually this week and said that they found CTE in his brain. And I'm guessing that Thomas's family is going to allow his brain to be examined. And it's I hate to say it, death is interesting, but it's going to be interesting to see if he's got CTE, because he's sort of not quite a super young. I mean, he's 33, so he's young, but he's kind of part of that generation where they're trying to phase out concussions as much as possible. With the different rules and with the better helmets and with the better turf and with all these different adjustments that the NFL, college, and high school is trying to make. And I think, Thomas is sort of like, I'm sure at the start of his career was a little bit different. It wasn't quite as looked at as concussions were as they are now. It wasn't as delicate of a subject as it is now. But he started that, this next wave of football players who retire, who unfortunately they have to pass away in order to look at their brains. But I think it's going to be interesting to see these younger players, how much CTE they have, because then they can determine, are we doing enough, or is the things that we're doing working? Or are there other things that we need to try to do to help prevent concussions further and help prevent CTE in situations like this?
No, I think you bring up a great point with that. And I wonder if the family is going to allow that as part of post-death, because I think that'd be really key to know if those were causing his seizures, and not only key for the family, but key for everybody else, I think, to know, because like you said, he was 33 years old. So it's like, when I saw that, I'm 37 years old. And I saw that, and I'm like, man, that's way too young for this young man to be going away, to be honest, to be losing his life. So it was extremely sad. And like I said, I've got so many fond memories of him, mainly when he was a Bronco, because he just dominated, man. In my opinion, if he's not the greatest Bronco wide receiver in the history of the game, there's only one other guy I can think of that would be close, and that's Ed McCaffrey. Ed McCaffrey was a dominant Broncos wide receiver. I honestly want to say Demayrius Thomas, during his dominant years, was more of a dominant threat than Ed McCaffrey was in his best years. So I want to say this guy was the best wide receiver in Denver Broncos history. And man, it's just so sad to lose him. And like I said, came to New England, played in a couple preseasons, caught 2 touchdowns in one preseason game, I believe, from Jarrett Stidham, and showed some flashes there. And then, unfortunately, the Patriots did trade him to the Jets, which even that was a shock, because we needed the depth at wide receiver. But I think he even still at that point in his career, a lot of teams still valued him because of what he did in Denver, that the Patriots got a high draft pick for him from the Jets, as high as it could be for an older player. So I think that played into why the New England traded him away. But you brought up that moment that he had with Tom Brady. Not only did they have that moment pregame, Tom Brady brought him a gift. He brought him a gift right there in that moment. Like you said, they had really only played with each other for a few weeks. But most of the people are saying that this guy was a better guy off the field than he was on the field. A great human being. People are talking about, like you said, all the charity work that he did, and that he loved being around kids and donating his money to kids. So the world is really missing out on the good man of Demayrius Thomas, and the football world is certainly going to remember for all the great years he had, but we're going to miss him. And this is really a tragic story.
Yeah, no question. And, hopefully this doesn't continue to happen with some of these guys. I hope some of these guys, if they have seizures or any type of brain issues, I mean, you should get looked at for anything, but brain issues, especially as a football player, or hockey players or soccer players, any of these sports where concussions are sort of prevalent, go get that stuff checked out. and go get it looked at and see what you can do, because there's crazy things happening in medicine where things can be treated. But and I'm sure he was to some extent, but you just wonder, like, these guys are, they're still young, and they're these finely tuned athletes who sometimes think they're invincible. So when something like that, a seizure happens, you almost say, like, this will go away, instead of like really having it looked at. So I hope he was having it looked at, but if not, the next wave of players who might have this, please get that looked at, because I think that's important. Folks, it's going to do it for topic number 6. Moving on to topic number 7, and it hits home here with the Boston Celtics. Should the Jays split? There was an anonymous, I think, GM or even front office person in the NBA who told, I believe, NBA Insider, that they think that the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they should be split up, that they can't play together. And then, of course, right after that, Jaylen Brown comes back from his injury, and Tatum scores 42. Jaylen Brown has 19. They beat the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks the other night. So, Brandon, do you think that these two guys need to be split up? I think we're having some issues with Brandon a little bit and his feed. So we're gonna let Brandon try to get everything back here. He probably had to do a restart of his laptop or something like that. I've been there a lot more than Brandon has, where I've had to reset everything. So totally feel for him. It's okay if Brandon has this, because I have had to do this many times, and that's been on my end. So we'll certainly give Brandon a pass. As a Celtics fan, I look at this and why would you want to split up two great players like this? If you just watch the game from the other night, where the Celtics were ended up beating the Milwaukee Bucks, like I said, the defending champs, you saw how there was so much more space for Jason Tatum to work inside. Same thing for Jaylen Brown. Even same thing for Marcus Smart. There was so much more room, because teams couldn't double team Jason Tatum anymore, or they couldn't double team Jaylen Brown. So one of them was open, and even though they have sort of the same body types, they have sort of different games. So it's not like they're the exact same player. And I just think it's crazy, Brandon, for any NBA team to think that you have to split up these two kinds of guys. These are the kinds of guys that every team wants. They want versatile wing defenders who can shoot, who can handle the ball, who can finish in transition, who are good guys. I mean, there's a question is, if Tatum, everybody keeps thinking that Tatum's the top guy, right? And is Tatum a killer? Is he a fierce enough guy where he wants to rip your throat out like a Kobe Bryant, like a LeBron, what LeBron became, like a Michael Jordan, like even like Dame Lillard's like that. Even I think Donovan Mitchell is like that, even though I think Tatum's better than Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell has a snarl to him, and I think Tatum needs that. But these two guys are just such good guys that I think that's why people are like, oh, they need to be separated. You can see how much better they are on the floor together rather than apart. So I don't see why you would want to separate these two.
I've got two things for you, and you actually brought up one of my things. So I'll get on to that one later, but let's start with the other one. I think you could see this in a couple of ways, to be honest. I think you can see that as being like, you're right, being like, why would you want to split these two up? We need to put more of a supporting cast around them that can allow them to flourish, and maybe, get them to play a little bit of a different system that will actually match their talents a little bit better. Because I do think at times they play great together, to be honest.
Yeah.
And light it up. And like you said, it's kind of, I don't want to say Batman and Robin, because I think they're pretty much close, to be honest. It's like Batman and Batman. You got two Batmans out there.
Sure.
So it's nice to have, and in basketball, when you got 5 guys on the court, it's nice to have 2 go-to players at any point in time. And I think you do with both of those guys. So that's the one side of looking at it. The other side of looking at it, and this is what I'm hearing from some fans, including from some people right in my own family, is Jaylen Brown gets hurt too much. And is not available enough right now. So do you dangle him out there as trade bait to see what you can get? And I think that is honestly a fair question. I really do, because he hasn't been available enough. And that is a skill in itself in sports, in professional sports, in high school sports and anything, and say that to even my high school players, being available is a skill. You know what I mean? You've got to be tough. You've got to play through certain injuries. You've got to be there for your team at all times. That's a skill, man, that not everybody has. I think Tatum has the notch above Brown when it comes to that, okay? And like I said, you can't knock a guy for getting injured. I get it. It does happen in sports. But I'm just saying there's two sides of it. So you can see not splitting them up. And then there's the other question of if you are going to split them up, I'm thinking it's Jaylen Brown is the one that you dangle and see what you can get in return. And the one guy that I would definitely want to get him for, which rumor has it right now, has been unhappy the last couple of weeks. And even though they're trying to tone those down in Portland, that those rumors are wrong. And even Dame Lillard is saying that rumor's wrong. Rumors are still coming out that he's unhappy and wants to be traded. So guess what? Dame time all day here in Boston. And then, like you said, you have a guaranteed killer there at the end, a guy that is not going to shy away from the big moment. And guess what? Tatum can actually defer to Damian Lillard. I think right now at times, I don't necessarily think he can defer to Jaylen Brown because they're just as good. But I'm telling you, I think he could defer to Damian Lillard, especially when we're looking for that last second shot.
Yeah, I think, some NBA writers have even said, if Dame Lillard were on the Celtics, let's say all three of them were together, too, is that, Lillard, because he's now in his 30s, which is sort of old in the NBA. We're in our 30s and we feel great. But Dame Lillard wouldn't have to carry the team every night. Tatum can kind of do that, and he's just not the guy at the end of the game who's ripping the throat out of the other team. But he's gonna get the 26 and the 8 rebounds and the 4 assists every night, and then Lillard can kind of just do his thing. And then nights when Tatum's off, Jaylen Brown can pick up the slack, or both of them, and then Lillard can be more of a facilitator. So that's the type of thing that people have been talking about. You're right with Jaylen. You're right. That's why Jason Tatum is a notch above Jaylen Brown, is because of the health concerns. Jaylen Brown has just been banged up. It hasn't been anything super serious. At the end of last year, I can't remember if he broke his thumb or if he tore a ligament in his thumb, but he was out because of that. They didn't bring him back. They weren't going to make a run in the playoffs. But yeah, Jaylen Brown has just not been durable. Meanwhile, I was trying to think back, I can't remember, other than being out with COVID, I can't remember Jason Tatum being out for more than a game. I don't remember that. Even as much as he played as a rookie, he started a ton of games as a rookie and came off the bench a lot as a rookie and played a lot as a rookie player in the NBA. And I can't remember him having a serious injury or even pulling a hamstring or anything like that when he was out for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. So that's part of it. And I don't want to split these guys up because I do think if let's say you get a third star, you need a Jaylen Brown type who, when Miami, when LeBron went to Miami and Chris Bosh went to Miami, it was LeBron who was the top player. Dwayne Wade was second banana. And then Bosh was the most unselfish, where he kind of took a backseat to the other two, but was still a great player and is going to go to the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
I feel like Jaylen Brown, with his personality, with his versatility, he doesn't always have to have the ball in his hands. He's a good spot-up three-point shooter now, really good in transition, and he's a good defender. He can kind of be that third guy in a championship team, and I think it would be easier for him to do that and still be an elite player, and if you bring another guy in. So I think he's kind of perfect for that piece. So, I would hate to trade a guy like Jaylen Brown, who now you have locked up for a couple of years with Tatum. That's the other thing. These two guys are locked up together for the next couple of years. Whereas there's other teams who stars, they don't like it there for a year. I'm already hearing that the Pelicans should trade Zion Williamson. It's like, part of it is because of his foot injury, but he doesn't want to stay there. He wants to go to New York and all this kind of stuff. And he hasn't even played a full season. And, people are saying he already needs to be traded. Look at what happened to Harden. Look at what happened to Russell Westbrook. All these guys, if they want to, they're going to leave. The Celtics have these two young guys who like playing with each other. That's never been the issue. Who get along. They're not best friends, but they get along really well on this team. Why would you want to break that up? I think it's so hard to pair two guys together. If you want to get that third guy to win a title, you already have the pair. It's a lot easier to add that third guy than it is to kind of start all over. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't split these guys up at all.
I'm going to side with you here and say we should keep them together and get a third piece to have the big three. We've said that many times on this show. In the NBA, you need a big three, but we currently just have a big two. So we really do need that third piece. My one question back to you is just, would Portland not want one of those guys? So would you even be able to pull a deal without trading Brown? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not they would definitely want one of those guys. I think it's the same thing with the Sixers if they're trying to trade Ben Simmons, or the Pacers who want to they probably want to trade Turner over Sabonis. But if I'm the Celtics, I would love to get. I think Sabonis would fit perfectly with the Celtics. But you'd want to keep the other two guys. So any player that's going to be available, you want to keep Tatum and Brown to make that championship team. The other team's going to ask for Tatum and Brown, but I don't think the Celtics are going to give it up. So you got to try to put a package together where you match salaries with a guy like Marcus Smart, who's valuable to a team, a guy like Al Horford, who's good for the locker room and just a good fundamentally sound player who's a good mentor to young guys. And he's got a big salary, but that's when he leaves, you have the trade exception, all that kind of thing. And then you have maybe you package a Robert Williams. You're going to have to. He's probably your best young player to trade because he doesn't make it, compared to what he is with size and athleticism, he doesn't make a ton of money. He just got an extension, but he's not making $20 million a year. And then you throw in a couple of your young guys with, Romeo Langford, Aaron Nesmith, Peyton Pritchard, and then you got to give up a ton of picks. And if you're the Celtics, you're going to be in the playoffs every year as long as these guys stay healthy. So these picks aren't going to be worth that much anyway. So then you got to give up a couple of, a few picks down the road, put, conditions on them, and then get your guy. I mean, that's how they're going to have to do it. I don't know if it's going to happen. Teams are now kind of reevaluating what they want in trades too, with the player empowerment movement is kind of changing things. So we'll see what happens. I think there's a move to be made, like a Drew Holiday when the Bucks picked up Drew Holiday last offseason. I thought that would have been perfect for the Celtics. Didn't happen for them, but you saw what Drew Holiday did for the Bucks. So that's something that I think they could do as well. So we'll see. I mean, the thing is, I think they're in good position to make a deal and still hold on to their two top players, but it's just going to take some more time.
I hope you're right, man. I hope we can keep both of them and still get a third player. Because like I said, we need a big three. We need, whether it's a center, like you said, Sabonis would be that big three, in my opinion. Or Dame Lillard. You need another star that you can go through in a big moment, and the Celtics are lacking that right now. So Brad Stevens, come on, man. Pull a move, pull a trade. Let's move on to topic number 8. Topic number 8, Curry is the three-point king. And I mean, honestly, it's nothing new, to be honest. He's been the three-point king for the last few years, but now it's official. Steph Curry has broken the three-point record and holds it all time.
That's right. Past Ray Allen. Steph now has 2,977 threes or something like that. That'll increase.
Going up anyway.
Yeah, it's going up no matter what. I think the craziest, there's two things. One, I think we have to remember how much Steph Curry has changed the game of basketball. I mean, the amount of threes that players on all levels take now. I mean, Brandon, you're a basketball coach. Like, I'm sure your players are taking a lot more threes than we did when we were in high school. I'm seeing high school players take threes on fast breaks. We were taught to all just go to the basket. Now it's like everybody flare out, because we want open threes on fast breaks. It's commonplace now for players to take 7, 8, 10, 12 threes a game. I mean, Larry Bird, who's considered a prolific three-point shooter, would take 2 or 3 a game in the 80s. And he was a three-point shooter. Yeah, now it's players hope they make at least 3 threes in a game. It's just unbelievable how much he's changed the game. The pace and space era, I think, was sort of, coaches adjusted to players like him. And now, on top of that, he's kind of like this smaller player. I mean, he's not tiny, but he's, I think kids like the way that he plays because he's not this big, hulking, athletic freak like a LeBron or a Shaq or even Michael Jordan, who was 6'6" and he would just glide through the air. What Steph Curry does other players at other levels can try to emulate, you know? So I think that's why he's really changed the game. Second thing is he's 33 years old, and he just passed Ray Allen. Right when Ray Allen retired with that record, he was 38. So let's just say Steph Curry plays another 5 years, okay? How many more threes is he going to add to this record if he plays another 5 years? He's going to add at least another 1,500 probably, you know, 1,200 to 1,500 more threes. He's going to get this up to almost 4,500 threes. That's just crazy to me. And it's just unbelievable that this guy has just the swooping changes he's made to basketball is just it's hard to kind of comprehend at times.
Before I go into my thing, best shooter of all time?
Yes, yeah, no question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got to agree and say the best shooter of all time. I think even before he got this, you could say that he was the best shooter of all time statistically because he hits it at such a high rate compared to Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, and his teammate is up there. We talked about that in the top 5. Klay Thompson is up there. So imagine having both these guys on the court. That's when they're really the Splash Brothers. You've got two of the greatest shooters of all time statistically by percentage on the same team right now. I can't wait for Klay to come back and see them both lighting it up. But Steph Curry, like you said, has changed the game of basketball. And like you said, changed it for more of a finesse style, right? And before, when basketball changed, it was the dunk, really, right? It was the dunk. People were dominating underneath. Shaq was dominating. You had dominant big men. And I guess if you went further back, when the three-point line was introduced, that was a big change. But even then, they still weren't being like, oh, now I've got a three-point line. Let's jack it up from there. No, that has only come in this current generation with and led by Steph Curry, jacking up, like you said, 12 to 15 three-pointers a game. But, you know, he's going to hit 6, 7, maybe 8 of them. So it's amazing what this guy can do. I watched his pregame warm-up last night, and he missed one shot out of maybe 30 or 40 shots in his pregame warm-up. And I'm telling you, this is from all different spots, on the run, catch and shoot, coming off screens, runners, floaters. He was doing it all. Like, I was impressed, man. And it's something that a young basketball player should watch and see if this is what he's doing in his pregame. I need to start doing these things and start emulating my game after him. He wasn't just shooting three-pointers in pregame. And like you said, it does change the game. I have to remind my kids, shoot a 2, man. Shoot a mid-range. Because the mid-range, in my opinion, is hit at a higher clip, especially in high school basketball. You know, in the pros, granted, the guys are going to hit the 3 at a higher clip. They're professional. But in college and high school, the 2 is still king, in my opinion. But he's changed the game where these guys don't care. They want to shoot the 3 anyway. So you've got to convince them to shoot the 2 as well. But yeah, man, in my opinion, the greatest shooter of all time. He's still got a long way to go. He's going to make that record unattainable at this point. I mean, I think people were looking at Ray Allen being like, when he broke that it wasn't going to get broken. And then that's when Curry really caught fire and has now really just blown up the game. And like I said, he's going to put that record in a different stratosphere that nobody's even going to be able to sniff it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you got to remember, too, is that now kids are shooting threes when they're in, 3rd grade. You know, I remember when we were in middle school, it was like, you know, you don't even try that. You got to learn how to shoot your free throws. You got to learn how to hit layups. Kids are not starting out, you know, learning how to hit a layup. They're starting out how to learn how to hit a 3 because it's so prevalent in the game now. So there's going to be more shooters that are, you know, even we were just talking about Jason Tatum. You know, in the past, Jason Tatum would be kind of a combo forward. He'd be a small forward, power forward type player who probably wouldn't have shot a lot of threes in the NBA. Now he's shooting 7 a game because it's just part of the game now, you know? Yep. And that's the biggest thing. Kids are now shooting threes as young as, you know, 9 and 10 years old because they know they can. They know that that's part of the game. It's almost like a layup or a free throw in basketball now is the what the 3-point shot is now. And that's what kids are practicing. It's unbelievable. It's changed the game. And it's not going back. I think a lot of, if anything, they're just going to make the court wider. I think that's what the next thing they're going to have to do. But that's going to do it, folks, for topic number 8.
Live by the 3, die by the 3. I had to get that in there. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's beautiful. Topic number 9, folks. You know, we're getting down to the end of the year here on Comeback Sports. It's been a great year. We've had a blast doing this show. We're going to go back and look at some of our favorite topics. we're going to pick up our 5 favorite topics from the year. So I'm going to start off, going to count them down. This is number 5 for us. Brooks Koepka versus Bryson DeChambeau. This was a lot of fun during the PGA season. I wish the feud was still going. During the Ryder Cup, they sort of squashed it. But we would love when this feud was happening. You need 2 golfers that kind of don't like each other. And I wanted to see a tournament. They didn't really have a tournament when they were neck and neck going into the final hole either. That would have been cool. So hopefully, something happens where the rivalry is renewed. We all remember that press conference, or not press conference, but after a round, Brooks Koepka was talking to a media member, and Bryson was kind of doing, just kind of walking circles around Koepka, and Koepka just looked at him in disgust, like, this idiot's doing this again, because DeChambeau is just such a clown. But it was great. I mean, this was good for golf. So I do hope that they renew this kind of angst for each other. And this was just a fun story this year.
No, I agree. I loved it. I personally loved it. I thought it was good for golf. It was good for sports and entertainment. So I absolutely loved it. Am I going on to number 4, or am I giving you my opinion about this one? Okay, all right.
Yeah, let's go on to number 4. A little bit.
What's the 4th topic? Throw it up there. I don't remember what the
number 4 here is. We've got Horner versus Toto.
Oh man, this is one for
4.
me.
That should be 1, but okay. We'll go with 4.
Yeah, this is a great topic for us. I mean, this topic is still alive today, right now, as we're speaking about it, where even after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Christian Horner was throwing shots at Toto Wolff and at Mercedes, and he actually publicly thanked Nicholas Latifi for crashing and said he was going to send him Red Bull to his house. That's what's made this even worse, right? Where the integrity of the sport is at stake, because you've got him thanking the guy for crashing and bringing out the safety car. Like, are you in cahoots with him? Like, what's going on here? Why are you thanking the guy for him crashing and almost losing his life? Like, I don't get it. So Christian Horner, I've lost a lot of respect for him over this year, to be honest. More lost for him than Max Verstappen, and honestly, but yeah. I did hit that unfollow button on Max. Like, don't care to follow you anymore either, buddy. But Toto Wolff, man, I mean, these are two big stars in this sport that aren't even on the track, Christian and Toto Wolff. So I think there's even a lot more fireworks that are going to happen over these next couple of weeks between those two, and we'll be sure to cover it.
Yeah, this is perfect timing to rehash this topic because of what happened in Abu Dhabi over the weekend. But for Red Bull, like Verstappen, you could almost excuse for some of this behavior because he's only 23. Horner's a team principal. Like, you got to have more class than that, man. But that'll be a topic, like you mentioned, for a long time. We're going to head down now to topic number 3 as we count down our top 5 topics. And the next one is Luca Doncic, his sensational NBA and Olympic sort of season, or a combination of seasons. Luca has, off the bat been so good. There hasn't been a player really since LeBron who's been this good out of the gate. And Luca's just been sensational. He's hurt now. I think he needs to learn how to take care of his body a little bit better. He needs to get in better shape. But he was great last year in the NBA, but he was also unbelievable in the Olympics. He carried this Slovenian team. They had no business even getting to the Olympics, but he won a game. I can't believe it was the World Games where he won a qualifying game and helped Slovenia win a qualifying game by just dominating. Then got them to the first round of the Olympics. Then I think they won in the first round. Then he got to the next round, and it was like they went so much further because they had Luca Doncic. They had literally almost anybody else there. They probably wouldn't have gone as far. So Luca's just been, on this crazy, trajectory to one of the top players in the NBA. Again, he needs to get in better shape, and he needs to kind of, want to show that he wants to be that kind of guy. But if he does get in shape, and if he does take it seriously, I think he will be that top player in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he gets a little bit more speed, he'll be unstoppable, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing, is some of these NBA guards are so fast they can stay in front of him. If he gets a little bit more of a dangerous first step with the ball, he'll be unstoppable, because he's clearly already one of the best players in the NBA and in the world. So I love Luca, love him. What's topic number 2? Sorry, I'm so bad at this.
No good. No worries, man. Topic number 2, Shohei Ohtani dominates the world of baseball. We talked a lot of Shohei this year.
Love superstar Shohei Ohtani, and I love saying that, right? That's like our tagline on this show. The young Japanese superstar Shohei Ohtani, and I know all of our Japanese fans love hearing me say that. because that is our tagline to cover him. But like we said, it was easy to cover this guy. He's clearly the best player in baseball. He brought history to baseball, right? He brought the eyes back to baseball. He brought the money back, man. I love watching this guy. He's a true athlete playing the sport as well. I mean, this guy is just physically gifted and built. He looks like he could be playing wide receiver in the NFL, honestly. Yeah. So it's like, I love, put him in, man. Like, let's sign him up. But I love Shohei Ohtani. Like I said, he's the man, superstar of the world.
Also a class act, too. Handled everything. You know, when they started checking hats and gloves for foreign substances, he always had a smile on his face. Like, here you go. I'm just really good. You can look at any of my stuff. Love Shohei. Last topic number one. It was a big topic again this week. Verstappen versus Hamilton. You know, this year was, you know, we just talked about how much it sucked that it ended the way it did, but it was an awesome year to watch F1 racing because of these two guys. You know, we mentioned before Verstappen sort of was dominant in the first part of the season, second half of the season. Lewis Hamilton was the dominant one. So, you know, having these two guys duke it out, you have the young 23-year-old and you have the veteran who's, you know, the 8-time champion he was trying to make it 8 straight this year. Yeah. Right. So, you know, just having those sort of contrasting drivers with age and with experience and with Red Bull versus Mercedes, it was just awesome. And despite everything that happened this weekend, Verstappen versus Hamilton was great to see this year.
Yeah, it was an amazing year, which is even more of a reason not to have it tainted like this at the end. Yep. So they have to figure out this controversy and make it right and make this injustice right and bring it to something that we can all agree on that is fair and competitive. What we saw was not even close. But I agree. The rivalry between these two and the teams is amazing, and I hope it continues. But it's got to be fair going forward, and the rules have to be set in stone and followed and more consistent. We need a new race director. We need better stewards. Formula One, like you said, $1 billion industry. They've got all the resources to make it better and to make improvements and to fix their wrongs that they've done over this past weekend. So if they do that and they bring the integrity back to the sport, we still got a lot going forward.
No question.
Let's move on to topic number 10 after our top 5. Topic number 10, I'm going to slide this over to Pat, the shot caller, Pat. He can explain it a lot better than me, but I do want to say we love our loyal fans, and we're not going to leave you alone.
We appreciate you, folks. See some of the live chat folks right there. We got a lot of folks chiming in today. I'm sure about F1. Ruzaman, of course, at the top of the list. We have a few other folks in there as well. Folks, we really appreciate you. Maybe we'll get into some of those in a minute. Big show announcement here. We're thinking about changing the format of the show and possibly going to an all F1 type of show. We're thinking that maybe this is a good change for us. We clearly have a lot of fans who love F1, and as much as we love talking about other sports, I mean, Brandon's a coach in football and basketball. He played football and basketball and ran track in high school. I played football and basketball in high school. You know, that's our passion. But F1 is really taken off, and now we're trying to consider doing a full F1 show. Brandon, you know, did what happened over the weekend? Did that kind of throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into our plans here as far as you're concerned? Is this something where, you are questioning the integrity of F1?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. Like, I've been a fan since I was a little kid. We've talked about that on the show. So I've been around Formula One for a long time, decades now at this point, and I've never seen anything so controversial or that would tear apart the community so much. And right now, the community's torn in half. You've got people at each other's throat nonstop, whether they're on the Verstappen camp or Lewis camp. And on top of that, everybody's calling for the race director to be fired. Like you said, there's just so much chaos around the sport right now. I've never seen it. And the integrity of the sport is at question with this tainted title. So I want to see what Mercedes does. And like I said, I hope they bring it to the highest court to be able to basically get this overturned. And like we've said many times on this show, they can change that finish, and they've done it before. I'll bring up Carlos Sainz again, earning his first podium in Brazil from a post-race change where they gave a post-race penalty and they promoted Carlos Sainz to the podium. So if they want to fix this wrong, unjust act that they've committed, they can fix it, and they need to. If they need the courts to force them to fix it, well, then Mercedes is going to have that, and I'm all for that. I stand with Lewis Hamilton. I stand with Mercedes. They need to get this fixed, and he is the 8-time champion, in my opinion, like you said. So I want the integrity of the sport restored, and I'm hoping that is what's going to happen over these next 48 hours or maybe week. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it needs to happen as soon as possible. They need to right that, put the right in, and make Lewis Hamilton the champion, and they need to clean up the integrity of this sport because I still want to cover it. I love it, and it's going to be an exciting season next year too. I would love to continue on.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons why we're thinking about changing to F1 too, is all the changes with the rules and everything are going to kind of make it even more exciting. There's going to be more teams that are going to be in races, like we mentioned before, and it's going to be more content for us. So we could do an F1 show with F1 content. There's going to be enough there for us to do. So, folks, this is our 52nd straight show. We've done 52 weeks of shows. And Brandon, you've done a fantastic job, because I have had to miss a few for different things. So appreciate you filling in for me. But it's just unbelievable that we've done this many.
Yeah, I mean, what a streak. Producer Ben's saying it might be 51. It might be 52. I mean, we're like the race director there, Ben. You don't know what's going on. Now I'm just joking. That's a joke. I'm just trying to make myself happier.
Dagger.
The chaos that's going on behind the scenes, but not with you. With F1. He said he's about to call in. I love it. I love you, Producer Ben. You know that. But yeah, 51 or 52 shows in a row. That's an amazing streak. And the coaches specials were fun. And to be honest, I couldn't have done it without Producer Ben running the show behind the scenes. None of us could have done that. But yeah, the coaches specials were amazing, and we kept that streak going. But yeah, man, we've kept a heck of a year, and we've had fun doing it.
No question. I just want to, give a shout out to some of the folks who've been dipping in the live chat tonight too. We got Jeff Lewis saying that what happened in Abu Dhabi is the greatest robbery in the history of sport. Ruzaman's been chiming in a lot as usual, which we love. I'm still depressed, but it was Netflix who needed content for a Drive to Survive season. He says season 3. I think it's season 4, right? That this season will be. And then Jeff Lewis, again, Mercedes are boycotting the FIA gala tomorrow. We also have Denise Dublin saying the FIA is corrupt. We have John Ayomide who's saying you guys are blessed. Thank you.
Love you, John. Thank you, John.
Appreciate that, John. He says, I'm into F1 from Nigeria. I can join the chat and give opinions, top-notch, bias-free, even a good recap of the championship. We appreciate you, John. Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you, John.
And we have Alexis Hood. Her message was deleted, so I don't know what she typed in there.
Verstappen fan.
Verstappen fan. Okay, yeah, that's okay, Alexis, you chime in too. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you because you love the sport. We want to hear from you. So, folks, we appreciate you all year long, especially as we develop this show and your participation. We had Ruzaman actually called in a few weeks ago. A few other people call in, so really appreciate everybody on that. But, if you do want to give your opinion about what we should do for our show, please let us know. Tweet at us, jump into the live chat next week. Let us know. We're not going to do a poll or anything like that, but we would love to hear from you. But that's what we think we're going to go with the direction of the show is all F1. But we'll see how things shake out here at the end of 2021 as the pandemic continues. We've had to pivot many times on many different things, just like everybody else. So we'll see what happens. But folks, thank you so much for joining us here on Comeback Sports as usual. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, right on our social media pages. You saw the number earlier, and make sure you give us a subscribe on YouTube on the Comeback Sports channel. All that content will be fed to you, and you can check out all the things that we've been talking about in F1 and all the other sports as well. A lot of good stuff there. So make sure you subscribe to us on our YouTube page. Brandon, we'll see you next time, buddy.
Hey, have a good night.